On the peaceful colony planet of New Haven, life was simple and good. The small human settlement sat nestled between rolling green hills and crystal-clear lakes. Children played in the streets, their laughter echoing through the air. Among them was little Timmy, a bright-eyed boy of 7 with a mop of curly brown hair and a smile that could melt hearts. Timmy lived with his parents, John and Sarah, in a cozy house at the edge of the settlement. John worked as a farmer, tending to the fields that fed the colony. Sarah was a teacher at the local school. They were a happy family, content with their life on this distant world. One sunny morning, Timmy woke up excited. Today was the day of the annual colony fair. He couldn't wait to ride the makeshift Ferris wheel and eat the sweet treats his mother had promised. As he gobbled down his breakfast, his parents exchanged fond glances over his head. "Slow down, champ," John chuckled. "The fair isn't going anywhere." Sarah ruffled Timmy's hair. "Remember to stay close to us, okay? There might be some Galactic Empire officials visiting today." Timmy nodded, too focused on his food to pay much attention. The Galactic Empire rarely bothered with their small colony. To him, they were just boring adults in fancy uniforms. The family made their way to the town square, where colorful banners fluttered in the breeze. Timmy's eyes grew wide at the sights and sounds. He tugged on his father's hand, pointing at the games and rides. As they walked through the crowd, they noticed a group of stern-faced aliens in sleek uniforms. The Empire officials had arrived. Most colonists gave them a wide berth, but Timmy was too young to understand the tension in the air. One of the officials, a tall, purple-skinned alien named Zorax, was clearly drunk. He swayed on his feet, his 3 eyes struggling to focus. His fellow officers looked embarrassed, but did nothing to stop him as he stumbled through the fair. Timmy, distracted by a shiny balloon, let go of his father's hand and darted away. John called out, but his voice was lost in the noise of the fair. Timmy weaved through the crowd, chasing the balloon as it floated on the breeze. Suddenly, he collided with something solid. Looking up, he found himself staring at the towering form of Zorax. The alien glared down at him, his breath reeking of strange liquor. "Watch where you're going, human spawn," Zorax slurred, his tentacle-like fingers curling into fists. Timmy, frightened by the alien's angry tone, began to cry. "I'm sorry, mister. I didn't mean to." But Zorax was too far gone in his drunken haze to listen. In a moment of alcohol-fueled rage, he lashed out with one of his powerful arms. His intention might have been to simply push the child away, but his impaired judgment and alien strength proved fatal. Timmy flew backward, his small body crumpling as it hit the ground. The sickening crack of his skull against the pavement silenced the entire fair. For a heartbeat, everything stood still. Then chaos erupted. Sarah's agonized scream cut through the air as she rushed to her son's side. John was right behind her, his face pale with shock and fury. Other colonists surged forward, some to help, others to confront the Empire officials. Zorax, suddenly sobered by the horror of what he'd done, stumbled backward. His fellow officers quickly surrounded him, forming a protective barrier against the angry crowd. As Sarah cradled Timmy's lifeless body, weeping uncontrollably, John stood up slowly. His eyes burned with a cold fury as he faced the Empire officials. "You," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You killed my son." The lead official, a thin, gray-skinned creature, stepped forward. "This is a regrettable accident. Officer Zorax will be disciplined." "Disciplined?" John's voice rose to a roar. "He murdered a child. Our child." The crowd's anger was palpable now. More colonists were arriving, drawn by the commotion. The Empire officials began to look nervous. "We will leave now," the lead official announced. "We advise you all to remain calm. Any action against Empire personnel will be severely punished." As they retreated, half dragging the shell-shocked Zorax with them, John turned to the gathering crowd. His eyes were hard, his voice shaking with emotion. "They can't get away with this," he said. The Empire has gone too far. It's time Earth knew what happened here. As the news spread through the colony, a grim determination settled over the people. They knew that this incident would change everything. The peace they had known was shattered, replaced by a burning desire for justice. Little did the retreating Empire officials know that their actions on this small colony would soon spark a conflict that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The news of Timmy's death spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Within hours, it reached Earth. The video of the incident, captured by a colonist's shaky camera, played on every screen worldwide. People watched in horror as the drunk alien official struck down the innocent child. In New York, United Earth Government headquarters buzzed with activity. President Maria Chen sat at the head of a long table, her face grim as she addressed her cabinet. "This cannot stand," she said, her voice firm. "The Empire has crossed a line." Defense Secretary Jack Thompson leaned forward. "Madam President, perhaps it's time we reveal Project Dreadnought." A hush fell over the room. For 100 years, Earth had been secretly building a massive fleet of warships. Now they had 700,000 dreadnoughts hidden in underground bases and asteroid belts across the solar system. President Chen nodded slowly. "Do it. The people need to know we can fight back." Across Earth, giant screens in city squares flickered to life. President Chen's face appeared, her expression solemn. "My fellow humans," she began, "today we faced a great tragedy. A child of Earth was murdered by the Galactic Empire. For too long, we have endured their rule. No more." She paused, her eyes flashing with determination. "I am hereby declaring war on the Galactic Empire. And we are not unprepared." The screens changed, showing vast underground hangars. Rows upon rows of massive warships filled the view. People gasped, their eyes wide with wonder and hope. "For a century, we have built in secret," President Chen continued. "Today, I reveal the existence of our fleet. 700,000 dreadnoughts, ready to defend humanity and bring justice to the galaxy." In London, old Mrs. Baker watched the announcement from her small apartment. Tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks as she thought of little Timmy, a boy she'd never met but whose fate touched her heart. "Give him hell," she whispered. In a small town in Kenya, a group of teenagers cheered as they saw the massive ships. For the first time, they felt proud and strong. "We'll show those aliens," one boy shouted, pumping his fist in the air. On a farm in Iowa, John Miller stood with his family, watching the president's speech. His son, about Timmy's age, clung to his leg. John's jaw clenched. "It's about time," he said, hugging his boy close. Back in New York, the streets erupted in a mix of anger and excitement. People poured out of buildings, talking animatedly. Some cried, others cheered. A chant started, growing louder by the minute. "Justice for Timmy. Justice for Earth." In orbit around Earth, the first wave of dreadnoughts emerged from hidden moon bases. They were enormous, each one a city in space. Their sleek hulls gleamed in the sunlight, powerful weapons bristling along their sides. Admiral Sarah Lee stood on the bridge of the flagship, humanity's hope. She watched as more and more ships joined the fleet. "Status report," she commanded. Her second-in-command, a young officer named David, responded, "All systems green, Admiral. The fleet is assembling as planned." Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the growing armada. "Send word to all ships. We launch in 24 hours." As the news spread, millions of humans volunteered to join the fleet. Training centers worked around the clock, preparing crews for the massive ships. Factories switched to war production, churning out supplies and weapons. In homes across Earth, families said goodbye to loved ones leaving for the fleet. There were tears and hugs, pride and fear mixing in equal measure. On the colony world of New Haven, John and Sarah, Timmy's parents, watched the Earth broadcasts. John's fists clenched as he saw the dreadnoughts. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I'm going to join the fleet." Sarah looked at him, her eyes red from crying but filled with determination. "We both are," she replied. "For Timmy." As Earth prepared for war, the Galactic Empire remained unaware of the storm about to break upon them. Their vast bureaucracy moved slowly, still debating how to handle the unfortunate incident on a small, insignificant colony. Little did they know that in just 24 hours, humanity would unleash a force that would shake the very foundations of their empire. The galaxy was about to change forever, all because they had underestimated the love and fury of the human race. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of activity across Earth and its colonies. As the deadline approached, the massive human fleet prepared to launch. At the main spaceport outside New Beijing, thousands of volunteers lined up to board transport ships. Among them were John and Sarah, Timmy's parents. Their faces were set with grim determination as they moved forward in the line. A young officer checked their IDs. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice softening. "I'm sorry for your loss. Your son's death won't be in vain." John nodded silently, while Sarah squeezed his hand. As they boarded the transport, they saw many others like them. Ordinary people turned soldiers by extraordinary circumstances. In orbit, Admiral Sarah Lee stood on the bridge of humanity's hope, overseeing the gathering of the fleet. Ships of all sizes joined the formation: massive dreadnoughts, speedy cruisers, and agile fighters. "Admiral," her second-in-command, David, called out, "the last of the fleet has arrived. We're at full strength." Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the spectacular view before her. 700,000 warships stretched as far as the eye could see, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. "Send the signal," she ordered. "It's time." Across the fleet, engines roared to life. The ships began to move in perfect unison, like a massive school of fish in the ocean of space. As the fleet prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, President Chen made one last address to the people of Earth. "Today, we take our first step into a larger universe," she said, her voice broadcast to every corner of human space. "We go not just for vengeance, but for justice. Not just for Timmy, but for all humans who have suffered under the Empire's rule. May fortune favor the brave." With a brilliant flash of light, the human fleet vanished from Earth's orbit, leaving behind a mix of hope and fear among those who remained. In the depths of space, the fleet re-emerged. Admiral Lee studied the star charts on her command console. "Our first target is the Empire outpost on Proxima Centauri," she announced to her bridge crew. "It's lightly defended and strategically important. Taking it will give us a foothold in Empire space." As the fleet approached Proxima Centauri, tension filled the air. For many, this would be their first taste of real combat. In the gunner's seat of a dreadnought named Earth's Fury, John Thompson gripped his controls tightly. Sarah sat beside him, monitoring the ship's energy systems. "For Timmy," John whispered, and Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. The Empire outpost came into view, a sprawling space station orbiting a red dwarf star. Alarms blared as the station's sensors detected the approaching fleet. Admiral Lee's voice crackled over the comm system. "All ships, engage as planned. Remember your training, and may humanity's strength guide you." The human fleet surged forward. Fighters zipped ahead, engaging the few Empire ships on patrol. Dreadnoughts moved into position, their massive guns targeting the station's key systems. The battle was short but intense. Empire ships, caught off guard by the sheer size of the human fleet, fell quickly. The space station's defenses crumbled under the concentrated fire of hundreds of dreadnoughts. Within hours, the Proxima Centauri outpost was under human control. As boarding parties secured the station, Admiral Lee received reports from across the fleet. "Casualties minimal," David reported. The Empire was completely unprepared for an attack of this scale. Sarah nodded, allowing herself a small smile. "Good. Prepare a report for Earth, and set course for our next target. We have a long way to go." As news of the victory spread through the fleet, a surge of confidence swept through the human forces. They had faced their first test and passed with flying colors. On the captured station, John and Sarah Thompson stood by a large viewport, looking out at the victorious human fleet. "We did it, Timmy," Sarah said softly. "This is just the beginning." John put his arm around her. "The Empire will regret the day they underestimated humanity." As the fleet regrouped and prepared for their next assault, word of the attack raced across Empire communication channels. The news would soon reach the Imperial capital, where it would be met with disbelief and growing alarm. The war had begun, and humanity had drawn first blood. The galaxy would never be the same again. The news of humanity's sudden attack spread through the Galactic Empire like wildfire. In the gleaming towers of the Imperial capital on planet Zord Prime, Emperor Xaxar raged at his advisors. "How dare these primitive humans attack us?" he roared, his 7 eyes flashing with anger. "They were nothing but a minor annoyance, and now they have the audacity to wage war." His chief military advisor, General Kraz, stepped forward nervously. "Your Imperial Majesty, it seems we underestimated them. Reports suggest they have a fleet of 700,000 warships." The Emperor's face turned a deeper shade of purple. "Impossible. Where did they hide such a fleet?" As the Imperial leadership struggled to come to terms with this new threat, the human fleet pressed on. Their next target was the Empire's main supply depot in the Orion sector. Admiral Sarah Lee stood on the bridge of Humanity's Hope, studying the holographic map of the sector. "This will be tougher than Proxima Centauri," she told her officers. "The Empire will be expecting us now." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Orion depot. This time, an Imperial defense fleet was waiting for them. "All ships, battle formations," Admiral Lee commanded. "Remember your training. We fight for Earth, for justice, and for Timmy." The space around the Orion depot erupted into chaos. Thousands of ships from both sides clashed in a dazzling display of firepower. Lasers and plasma bolts crisscrossed the void, while fighters darted between larger ships like angry insects. On board the Dreadnought, Earth's Fury, John and Sarah Thompson manned their stations with grim determination. Their ship rocked as it took a hit from an Imperial cruiser. "Shields at 80%, Sarah reported, her fingers flying over her console. John gritted his teeth and returned fire. His shot struck true, and the enemy cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash. "That's for Timmy," he muttered. The battle raged for hours. Despite being outnumbered, the Imperial ships fought fiercely. But slowly, surely, the human fleet's superior numbers began to tell. Admiral Lee watched the battle unfold with a mixture of pride and sorrow. They were winning, but at a cost. "Status report," she called out. Her second-in-command, David, looked up from his screen. "We've lost about 5,000 ships, Admiral. But the Empire has lost more than half their fleet here. The depot's defenses are crumbling." Lee nodded grimly. "Press the attack. We need this depot." As the last of the Imperial ships fell or retreated, the human fleet turned its full attention to the depot itself. The massive space station, nearly the size of a small moon, bristled with weapons, but it was no match for the concentrated firepower of thousands of dreadnoughts. Hour by hour, the depot's defenses were whittled away. Finally, a well-placed shot from Humanity's Hope struck the station's main reactor. The resulting explosion tore the depot apart, lighting up the sector with a new, short-lived star. A cheer went up across the human fleet. Their second major victory was secure. But amid the celebration, Admiral Lee remained focused. "Secure the sector," she ordered, "and prepare to receive our wounded. We've won a great victory today, but the war is far from over." As the fleet regrouped and tended to its damaged ships, news of the battle reached Earth. President Chen addressed the world again, her face a mixture of pride and solemnity. "Today, we have struck another blow against the Empire," she said. "But let us not forget the cost. We've lost brave men and women in this fight. Their sacrifice will not be in vain." Across human space, people celebrated the victory while mourning the losses. In homes and hospitals, on ships and stations, humans steeled themselves for the long war ahead. Back in the Orient sector, John and Sarah Thompson stood in a quiet corner of their ship's mess hall. They raised their cups in a silent toast. To Earth, to victory, and to the memory of their son, whose death had sparked this galactic conflict. As the human fleet prepared for its next assault, the Galactic Empire was reeling. For the first time in millennia, they faced a threat they might not be able to crush. The war had only just begun, and the galaxy held its breath to see what would happen next. 3 months had passed since the start of the war. The human fleet had won battle after battle, pushing deeper into Empire territory. But now, the Empire was ready to hit back. On the planet Zorg Prime, Emperor Xaxar stood before his war council. His purple skin was darker than usual, a sign of his anger and determination. "Enough," he roared. "These humans have been allowed to run wild for too long. It's time we showed them the true might of the Galactic Empire." General Kraz, now battle-hardened, nodded in agreement. "We've gathered our forces, Your Majesty. Our new superweapon, the Planet Killer, is ready." In the depths of space, the human fleet approached the Arcturus system, home to one of the Empire's largest shipyards. Admiral Sarah Lee studied the tactical display on the bridge of Humanity's Hope. "Something's not right," she muttered. "Where are their defenses?" Suddenly, alarms blared across the fleet. David, her second in command, shouted, "Massive energy spike detected. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." From behind Arcturus's largest moon, a colossal ship emerged. It was easily 10 times the size of the largest human dreadnought. Its hull bristled with weapons, and at its front was a massive cannon glowing with ominous energy. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Admiral Lee ordered, but it was too late. The Planet Killer fired. A beam of pure destruction lanced out, cutting through the human fleet like a hot knife through butter. Hundreds of ships, including several dreadnoughts, were vaporized in an instant. Aboard Earth's Fury, John and Sarah Thompson clung to their stations as their ship rocked violently. "We've lost a third of the fleet in one shot," Sarah cried out, her eyes wide with horror. John gritted his teeth. "We can't give up now. Timmy wouldn't want us to." Admiral Lee's voice crackled over the comm system. "All ships, regroup and concentrate fire on the Planet Killer. We need to take that monster down." The battle that followed was the most fierce and desperate the human fleet had faced. The Planet Killer continued to fire, each shot destroying dozens of ships. But the humans refused to retreat. Wave after wave of fighters and bombers launched, peppering the Planet Killer with explosions. Dreadnoughts moved into position, unleashing everything they had at the superweapon. Hours passed. The space around Arcturus became a graveyard of broken ships, both human and imperial. The Planet Killer's hull was scared and burning in many places, but it kept firing. On the bridge of Humanity's Hope, Admiral Lee watched with growing despair as her fleet was slowly whittled away. "We need a miracle," she whispered. As if in answer to her prayer, a young officer shouted, "Admiral, I found a weakness in the Planet Killer's design. There's a small thermal exhaust port that leads directly to the main reactor." Lee's eyes lit up. "Send the coordinates to all remaining ships. We need our best pilots on this." A squadron of human fighters broke away from the main battle, led by a skilled pilot named Jack Harper. They weaved through the chaos, dodging enemy fire and debris. "I see the target," Jack reported. "It's not much bigger than a trash compactor. This is going to be tough." Back on Earth's Fury, John and Sarah watched the fighters approach the Planet Killer. "Come on," John murmured. "For Timmy, for all of us." Jack's fighters screamed towards the exhaust port, enemy lasers flashing past him. At the last second, he fired 2 proton torpedoes and pulled up sharply. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a massive explosion bloomed from within the Planet Killer. Secondary explosions followed, rippling along its massive hull. A cheer went up across the human fleet as the superweapon began to break apart. The remaining Imperial ships, seeing their ultimate weapon destroyed, turned and fled. Admiral Lee slumped in her chair, exhausted but relieved. "We did it," she said softly. "But at what cost?" As the dust settled, the extent of the losses became clear. Nearly half of the human fleet had been destroyed, but they had won. The Empire's superweapon was gone, and with it, their best chance of turning the tide of the war. On Earth, President Chen received the news with mixed emotions. "Prepare a statement," she told her staff. "The people need to know about our victory, but also about the sacrifices made today." As news of the battle spread, humans everywhere steeled themselves for what was to come. They had faced the Empire's best shot and survived. Now it was time to push towards final victory. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the planet killer. The war had reached a stalemate. Both sides were tired, but neither was ready to give up. On Earth, President Chen met with her war council. The room was tense, filled with tired faces and worried looks. "We can't keep this up forever," General Thompson said, pointing to a map of the galaxy. "We've lost too many ships and too many good people." President Chen nodded slowly. "You're right. We need to end this war, and soon." But how? In the depths of space, the human fleet regrouped around a small, unnamed planet. Admiral Sarah Lee stood on the bridge of Humanity's Hope, looking out at the stars. "Admiral," David called out, "we're picking up a strange signal. It's coming from the planet below." Lee frowned. "What kind of signal?" Before David could answer, the main screen lit up. A face appeared. But it wasn't human or any known Empire species. The alien had blue skin, large eyes, and no nose. "Greetings, humans," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Zaxel of the Resistance. We've been watching your war against the Empire with great interest." A murmur of surprise ran through the bridge. Lee stepped forward. "Resistance. There are others fighting the Empire." Zaxel nodded. "Many species have suffered under the Empire's rule. We've been fighting from the shadows for centuries. But now, thanks to you, we have a chance to strike openly." On the planet's surface, John and Sarah Thompson were part of the team sent to meet Zaxel. As they stepped out of their shuttle, they gasped. The planet was covered in ancient ruins, far more advanced than anything they had seen. Zaxel greeted them personally. "Welcome to Atlan 7, the last refuge of the old republic that ruled the galaxy before the Empire." As they walked through the ruins, Zaxel explained. "The old republic was peaceful and just. The Empire overthrew it 5,000 years ago. We've been waiting for the right moment to restore it." In a vast underground chamber, Zaxel showed them something that made their jaws drop. Rows upon rows of advanced ships and weapons, covered in dust but still functional. "This is the legacy of the old republic," Zaxel said. "With these, and the combined strength of all resistant species, we can overthrow the Empire once and for all." Back on Humanity's Hope, Admiral Lee listened to the report with growing excitement. "This changes everything," she said. "If we can unite all the resistance forces." Word spread quickly through the human fleet. For the first time in months, there was hope in people's eyes. They were no longer alone in their fight. On Earth, President Chen addressed the world. "Today, we've made an incredible discovery. We are not alone in our struggle against the Empire. The galaxy is full of potential allies, waiting for a chance to fight back." Across human space, people cheered. The war had been long and hard, but now victory seemed possible. In the following weeks, representatives from dozens of alien species arrived at Atlan 7. Each had their own stories of suffering under the Empire, each ready to fight for freedom. John and Sarah Thompson found themselves working closely with the aliens, sharing stories and strategies. One day, Sarah found John staring at a photo of Timmy. "He would have loved this," John said softly. Meeting aliens, seeing spaceships. Sarah squeezed his hand. He's the reason we're here. His death sparked all of this. In a way, he saved the galaxy. As the combined fleet prepared for their final push against the Empire, a sense of destiny filled the air. Humans worked alongside aliens. Ancient technology was combined with modern innovations. Admiral Lee stood before the largest and most diverse fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Humans, Zaxel's people, and a dozen other species waited for her words. Today, we fight not just for Earth, not just for our own species, but for every free being in the galaxy. Today, we end the Empire's reign of terror. For Timmy, for all our lost loved ones, for the future. Let's bring freedom back to the stars. A massive cheer went up, echoing through space. As one, the fleet began to move. The final battle was about to begin, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The combined fleet of humans and alien allies dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Zord Prime, the heart of the Galactic Empire. Thousands of ships filled the space around the planet, a dazzling array of designs from dozens of species. On the bridge of humanity's hope, Admiral Sarah Lee took a deep breath. "This is it," she said, "the final battle." Beside her stood Zaxel, his large eyes fixed on the planet below. "After 5,000 years, we will finally reclaim our freedom." Suddenly, alarms blared across the fleet. From behind Zord Prime's moons, the Imperial fleet emerged. It was massive, nearly as large as the Allied force. "All ships, battle formations," Admiral Lee commanded. "Remember why we fight. For freedom, for justice, for Timmy, and all those who have fallen." The two fleets clashed in an explosion of light and fire. Lasers crisscrossed space, fighters darted between capital ships, and explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. On board Earth's Fury, John and Sarah Thompson manned their stations. Their ship shook as it took a hit. "Shields at 60%, Sarah reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. John gritted his teeth and returned fire. "We've come too far to fail now," he said. The battle raged for hours. Both sides fought with desperate intensity, knowing that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Slowly, surely, the Allied fleet began to gain the upper hand. The combination of human determination, alien diversity, and Old Republic technology proved too much for the Empire. As Imperial ships began to fall back, Admiral Lee saw their chance. "All ships, focus fire on the Imperial Palace," she ordered. "It's time to end this." The Allied fleet turned its guns on the massive space station that served as the Emperor's home. Under the combined firepower of thousands of ships, even its mighty shields began to buckle. Inside the palace, Emperor Xaxar watched in disbelief as his defenses crumbled. "How is this possible?" he raged. "We are the Empire. We cannot be defeated by lesser beings." But defeat was coming, swift and undeniable. With a final massive barrage, the Allied fleet broke through. The Imperial Palace erupted in a series of explosions, taking the Emperor and his inner circle with it. A cheer went up across the Allied fleet. After a year of brutal war, victory was theirs. In the days that followed, representatives from all Allied species gathered on Zord Prime to discuss the future. In a grand hall that once housed Imperial officials, a new galactic government was born. President Chen, speaking for Earth, addressed the gathering. "We have won a great victory," she said. "But our work is just beginning. We must build a galaxy of peace, freedom, and justice for all beings." Zaxel nodded in agreement. "Let us learn from the past. We will restore the best parts of the Old Republic, but improve upon it with the wisdom we have gained." As the new Galactic Federation took shape, changes rippled across the stars. Oppressed planets were freed, slaves were released, and a new era of cooperation began. On Earth, people celebrated their victory, but also remembered the cost. Memorials were built to honor those who had fallen in the war, with Timmy's name at the top of every list. John and Sarah Thompson stood before one such memorial, tears in their eyes, but pride in their hearts. "Our boy changed the galaxy," John said softly. Sarah nodded. "He would be so proud of what we've accomplished." A year to the day after Timmy's death, a grand ceremony was held on New Haven, the colony where it all began. Representatives from every allied species gathered to dedicate a new institute of peace and interstellar cooperation. As the ribbon was cut, fireworks exploded in the sky, forming the image of a smiling boy. Timmy's face looking down on a free and united galaxy. Admiral Lee, now head of the new Galactic Defense Force, stood with the Thompsons. Who would have thought, she mused, that the actions of one small child could reshape the universe? John smiled, his arm around Sarah. "It just goes to show," he said, "that every life has the potential to change everything." As night fell on New Haven, the stars seemed to shine brighter than ever before. In the vastness of space, countless beings on countless worlds looked up at those same stars, no longer in fear of the Empire, but with hope for a brighter future. The galaxy had been transformed, all because of a child named Timmy and the love of those who fought in his name.